Good morning, gentlemen. I'm back with another session today, and I hope you'll find it interesting. You remember I told you last time I'll talk about Taiwan and the crisis that is brewing there. So I'm going to talk about Taiwan now. But let's be very clear. A lot of people are of the opinion that the problem of Taiwan is created by China. China is the aggressor, is trying to attack a small independent country like Taiwan. And Joe Biden has gone and said that he would use force if necessary to defend Taiwan. Of course, the White House played down the remarks. But what exactly is the history? Is China really the aggressor, or the Americans are the one who are provoking? Let's have a look as to what exactly is the problem. Now, Taiwan, or Formosa, is a small island with about 20 million people, about 150 kilometers off the coast of China. It is recognized by the world as a part of the People's Republic. How did this come about? Let's have a look at history, and we'll see that the Americans committed some cardinal blunders, and they cooked their own goose. Now let's go and see. Till 1895, Taiwan was to an extent under the suzerainty of the Ming dynasty and the Qing dynasty of China. Right? There was a war in Korea, and the Chinese went for the help of the Koreans. The Japanese came in and the Chinese got defeated badly. When the Chinese were defeated, they agreed to cede the island of Formosa to Japan. And the island was taken over by the Japanese, and for the next 50 years it was under the control of the Japanese till 1945. That is 1895 to 1945. And the basis of this was what is known as the Treaty of Shimonoseki, which was signed in 1895 between China and Japan, where Chinese recognized Japan as the omnipotent ruler of Formosa, that is Taiwan now. This state of affairs continued. China made no attempt to claim it or occupy it for the next half a century, that's till 1945, and when the Americans dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. And what was the result of that? Japan surrendered. And once Japan surrendered, obviously they lost control of the island of Formosa. And the next step was what was to be done with the island. The Americans at that time committed the first blunder. President Truman handed over the island of Formosa to the Chinese. China had no control over it for half a century, and that was the best time to declare Formosa as an independent country, or at least under the control of the United States. We didn't do that. And why? The reason probably is that the Chinese Americans had a stooge in China. His name was General Chiang Kai-shek, and he represented the nationalist of the Kuomintang party. Now this man was fighting the communists. There was a civil war on then from 45 to 49, and in the civil war the Americans spotted Chiang Kai-shek was defeated. He just ran away from there, and almost 1 million Chinese escaped from the mainland to Formosa. They set up their nationalist government there, and Mao Zedong, who was the leader of the Communist Party, took over the mainland. At that time, China never had the wherewithal, the amphibious facility, the capability to launch an invasion of Formosa, so they let matters lie. The Americans continued supporting this regime, and one of the reasons why they handed over this island to China was that in 1945 they thought General Chiang Kai-shek was going to be the ruler of China, and he is our supporter, so give Formosa back to China. That is the first blunder. The second thing happened was that in 1949, Chiang Kai-shek decided that he would represent the entire China. Americans agreed. So they followed the one China policy with the Democratic Republic of Taiwan as the de facto China, while de jure, the actual China was under Mao Zedong. For the next quarter of a century, the Americans were just dilly-dallying. They didn't think about what's going to happen in the future. They were thinking that we must do something by means of which we can get back to the mainland, because China has always fascinated the Americans. And China was incorporated in the Security Council. Frankly, it didn't deserve to be there, but that's another point. And earlier, the seat was being held by the Kuomintang, and then the Americans realized that you can't carry on with this state of affairs, so they said, let's make an overture to China, get friends with China. The American thinking was that China will not be able to economically match the United States, will always remain a subservient power. It will be a good ploy to use it against Russia, the USSR that time. And so the American President Richard Nixon and his sidekick Henry Kissinger did something very foolish. Now that we can see in hindsight, they decided to open up to China. Basically, it was under pressure of the American barons, the business barons who wanted the lucrative, massive Chinese market. They poured in technology, they poured in millions of dollars later on. But Nixon made a visit to China in early 1972, and there he threw in the towel. Chiang Kai-shek at that time was alive, who had been alive for the Americans for the last 50 years. Well, they forgot about him. The poor man just died and went away. And the Americans made the overtures to China, and they made some very significant concessions. Now, what were those? First, they accepted the Chinese demand that there is only one China, right? They accepted a second demand that Taiwan or Formosa will never be made an independent country or recognized as an independent country. So when Richard Nixon made these two concessions, he tied an anchor around the neck of the American leadership. In the world, if China was to ever attack Taiwan, it would have the legal justification, because Taiwan has been recognized by the world, including the Americans, as a part of China. One China policy. And also, it must be understood that when Nixon made his visit to Beijing and paid his obeisance to the Chinese Emperor Mao Zedong, the 7th Fleet was withdrawn from the area. I mean, you can't think of bigger concessions than this. Nixon thought he was very clever. There's a saying in America, Nixon is recognized as Tricky Dick. I don't think he was tricky. He was actually a foolish man who tied down the American policy for the next 50 years. So the result was America missed another great opportunity, and they tied their own feet by making these concessions to the Chinese. Now, if you look in hindsight, now you can see who's to blame. America had all the aces in their hands. Taiwan was occupied by them. Everything was with them. They could have declared it as an independent country. They could have said, we do not recognize the one China principle. We will believe in self-determination. Let there be self-determination for Taiwan. I mean, they could have accepted it, done anything, but they didn't do it. So the next result, gentlemen, is that the problem of Taiwan continued. Initially, the Americans were pretty happy with the status quo because they were getting a lot of funding income from China. Chinese-American trade went up to $600 billion a year, though weighted in favor of China by about $200 billion. But the Americans were happy. The big American trade corporations all went to China. They poured in billions of dollars, research, technology, and Chinese are clever. They also did reverse engineering, and they started making their own products. And then, before the Americans could say anything, something like Rip Van Winkle went to sleep, and then he woke up after 20 years when he thought it's only one night. Well, the same thing happened here. The Chinese became the second biggest economy in the world. Their military began to move by leaps and bounds. They began to threaten India. They began to threaten all the neighbors. And they also made it clear to the Americans that Taiwan was their own area, their own province, and they had every right to occupy it. Now, international law tells us that any renegade province of any country can be taken over by that country. It is a recognized principle of international law, and the Chinese have been following it. They say it's our territory. You recognize it. The world has recognized it. Who the hell you say what? Don't invade Taiwan. Don't do this. Don't do that. So the Americans are in an extremely sticky wicket, and America, in case there is a war, will have to decide. You want to fight for Taiwan, or you say hands up. My personal feeling, America is not going to fight for Taiwan. They know fighting for Taiwan is a losing proposition. At the moment, China does not have the amphibious capability to launch a seaborne invasion. But this is not something that's going to continue forever. Chinese are building up their naval capability, the amphibious assault capability. They have got 2 aircraft carriers. They're planning to have another 10 more. And maybe in another 2 years' time, or maybe even earlier, China will have the capability. As it is, let us be clear that the Chinese are practicing how to hit the American carriers in the Gobi Desert. They made cardboard models of the ships, and they are practicing. They are also practicing on cardboard models and sand models the places to bomb in Taiwan. Taiwan is a small country. China is 1.4 billion. Taiwan is just about 23 million. So there is no comparison really. And China is, of course, now soon going to be the biggest economy in the world, and they, as it is, have the biggest army. And Russia is their ally. Americans have bungled back in Russia also. They went and supported Taiwan, tried to make Russia an enemy so that NATO could become a omnipotent force. When in actual fact NATO is obsolete, it's got no meaning. But they created the enemy in Russia, and they're paying the price for it there. And here also in the East, the Americans are on a sticky wicket. Other countries of China, around China, are scared of China, no doubt about it. Japan done such a lot of atrocities in China that they should really feel very sorry for themselves. They occupied China, where they used to routinely kill the women, rape the girls. It was something very normal for the Japanese. In fact, I remember reading somewhere, the Japanese had a competition. And what was that competition? How many Chinese you can behead? The race to behead Chinese. How many can you do it? Now, can you have such stupid things? But it was there. It's reported in the press, in the Japanese press. So Japan is no longer, of course, a military power. It's an economic power, but economic power without military power is a zero. Japan is now dependent on the Americans. And the Americans don't have a very happy record in Asia. They have lost in Afghanistan, ran away. People call it the mother of all retreats. They got defeated in Vietnam despite all the bombing they were doing. They couldn't win in Korea. They won in Iraq, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. Americans now can't walk the streets of Baghdad alone. And the influence is that of the Iranians. So everywhere you see, the Japanese are losing, Americans are losing. What even Pakistan is very wary of the Americans, you know. They're closer to China, and that is hurting the Americans very badly. Now we are coming to what next. The Americans, let's accept it, the fact, have committed tremendous mistakes, blunders. They could have recognized Taiwan as an independent country much earlier. They could have separated Taiwan from China and at the same time got it international recognition. But as it stands, other than some motley crowd of 3 or 4 countries like Nicaragua or something which are recognizing the Taiwan regime, nobody else recognizes it as an independent country. The Taiwanese president is shouting from the rooftops, we are an independent country, but the world doesn't recognize it. Nobody, even the United States. And Joe Biden and all the American presidents are just wondering what the hell is going on, what should we do? Let's say China launches an invasion tomorrow of Taiwan. They have the legal justification for it. Can anybody deny that? Taiwan is their renegade province. They just want to capture it back and the world accepts it. So what's the problem? But at the same time, the Americans cannot throw in the towel. They've done it too many times. And if they do it now, they're going to lose Southeast Asia totally. They'll not have a face there. The Philippines, as it is terribly angry with the Americans. I remember when China made the entire claim over the South China Sea, President Duterte, the president of the Philippines, said, this is with the American connivance. What did he mean? He meant that the Americans were serious. 20 years back, they would have sent 5 aircraft carriers into the South China Sea and rubbished the American claim. They didn't do it. The Chinese claim, sorry. They didn't do it. They were just sitting pretty, allowed China to have complete sway over the South China Sea. Why? They thought China is going to be their friend. China will be their yes man, but they didn't understand Chinese history. That's the American problem. China has got a history of 4,000 years, America has got a history of 300 years. There's no comparison. How do you compare it? Chinese got a think tank. They produce some great military theorists like Sun Tzu. You don't have anything like that in America. And Americans misjudged the Chinese very badly, and now they don't know how to pull their cashews out of the fire, what to do. They antagonize Russia. There's a Russia-China alliance on. They're trying to think that India should come on their side, and I don't think India is going to do that. India is not going to fight China for the help for the Americans. Anyway, coming back to Formosa, the sum total is this is an entirely American creation, an American problem, and there is no solution for it, other than at some stage Taiwan will have to go back to China. That is the fact. Whatever the American presidents, Joe Biden, anybody does, nothing much is going to come out of anything. It's going to be a big zero. This is very sad, because America under Roosevelt has a different image, an image of a power that would look to do good in the world. But after that, all that has evaporated. The Americans have been fighting wars thousands of miles from home, and I, for one, as a historian, can't understand what is the reason. They could have fought some fixed war, and if you fight a war, you fight to the end and you fight for victory. If you remember, Field Marshal Manekshaw had said to his soldiers, you go and fight, and if you lose, don't come back. But the Americans have been losing at every stage, and still they come back and go into the next war. And Formosa is going to be one of the very, very important and test cases for America. In fact, the world is watching, and I wish the Americans had shown some sagacity, some better intelligence, and they had acted properly maybe 50 years back. They didn't do it, and they're going to pay the price for it. I have a lurking feeling that the end of the American hegemony is just around the corner. It's not very far away. England as it is finished. We know it is a world power. It's got nothing. It's from Great Britain, it's become Little Britain. Joe Johnson made it strut around saying he's a great man, but it's not like that. England's got no power anywhere. Whatever power they have is a reflected power from America. An American eclipse is perhaps beginning. It can be stopped. No, everything can be stopped if a visionary takes or comes to power in America, becomes the president. But with men like Joe Biden there, God forbid. Gentlemen, I close now. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. And if you like my video, please do share it. It will be my great pleasure, and subscribe to it. Thank you very much. Take care and good luck.